great project and a great presentation. I'm torn between two impulses. I know that we're at the end of the evening and there's not much time to say much. But academic and microphone, it's very tempting to say a couple of things. I do want to say a couple of things very briefly, just because I think I got to know Emre maybe 2002 or 3, I'm not sure when, a long time ago. I went to Turkey the first time with, sorry?
That was your purgatory.
That's right, my purgatory, yeah, God test us in strange ways. I went to Turkey because of the contact with this group, Hizmet, who worked in service, 2004, and then I went over the next 10 years, mostly once a year. I mean, so I got to know the movement quite a lot here in Australia and in Turkey, and I'm a political scientist, and I work as you heard on well, I began my career working on democratization, which is an interest in Turkey as well, but I'm a Southeast Asianist. But I spent a lot of time working on extremist groups, so I do know a thing or two, I think, about social movements, particularly when they sort of urge towards extremes. So I mention that simply because people often ask the question, this movement seems like it's too good to be true. In any case, the Erdogan regime turned on them. There was a so-called coup attempt on July 15, 2016. I don't call it a coup attempt myself because looking at the evidence, I think it was a confected incident. The government's never been straight on the story. Didn't follow the typical pattern of a coup. Turkey's had 3 military coups in the past and a soft coup before that. But it was a pretext for a purge on many people. The Gulen Hizmet movement, just one group. I mention this because it's important for us to understand the scale of the story. It's bigger than we can imagine. It's not the only story of suffering. The Syrians, the civil war, that's a story that almost overshadows everything. But what's happened in Turkey has been very tragic. When I first went there, I was very excited to see another Muslim majority country like Indonesia, where I've done most of my work, making a transition to consolidate democracy. And that went really well up until the end of 2013. Accusations came out against Erdogan on massive corruption charges, including dealing with Iran. It was brokered by newspaper, magazine, TV outlets linked to the Hizmet movement. The Hizmet movement is a civil society movement, but very much like a lot of movements in history in Europe and North America, inspired by religion, in this case Islam rather than Christianity, very much involved in schools and universities, but also in media, because Turkey didn't have any independent media of scale until the movement had papers like Zaman. But thanks for taking that news about a very serious corruption problem. They were, first of all, prosecuting prosecutors, lawyers, police who had been involved in the case, judges were purged, and then the purge of the movement began for reasons of politics. It's a long story. It's basically politics. It's not because the movement itself has, as far as I can see, and I gave you that history just to understand, I've looked at this closely for a long time, the movement itself, it's a movement of people, imperfect people. So, of course, there are all sorts of characters and personalities, but it's not a nefarious movement, it's not a political movement. It became a victim in the machinations of Turkish politics, but it's a movement intent on doing good. And I'll just say in conclusion, to my mind, when I ask myself the question, well, am I romantic about this movement? Have I missed something? One way to test a community is to put them under pressure and see how they respond. And this is a movement that has been put under terrible pressure. Yes, thousands have crossed into Greece and beyond, but 500,000 people have been investigated. 150,000 civil servants have been dismissed, which means made persona non grata, so they lose their housing, their transport, their healthcare, everything. They just live stateless. Some of them were allowed eventually to leave Turkey, but many of them weren't allowed to use their passport to travel. 100,000 people who have been jailed, many, almost 100,000, many have died in jail, 6,000 plus academics, including every single dean in the country and university leadership, over 3,000 schools, colleges, universities, about 450 judges dismissed, so people of substance who would hold governments to account. So it's a larger tragedy. And in response to often really, really horrible things, a lot of grandmothers have been put in jail and kept there in horrible conditions. A lot of women who are about to give birth, just giving birth, taken with their baby into jail. A lot of deaths in jail. There's good indications of torture, unfortunately. Quite a few people have fallen from balconies in the process of being arrested. Really horrible stuff. I've never heard of a single case of anyone fighting back or turning to violence, which confirms to me in a very powerful way this is a movement of peace and dialogue. It got caught up in political machinations not of its own choosing, and the result is a tragic not just of this movement. I mean, the movement lives on around the world, but it's a shadow of itself in Turkey. But for Turkey itself, I mean, Turkey was a promising democracy. It's not at the moment. God willing, it'll come back and have its chance again in future. But at the moment, there's been incredible suffering, which is unnecessary. It's that familiar human story. A few people whose interests were threatened, who were facing justice, turning in great anger and complete callousness, and putting a whole country to ruin rather than face justice themselves. So thank you, Alex. You really reminded us of a snapshot of one tragic story of many tragic stories in the world today. And by the by, Australia's not been particularly good with treating people crossing our river looking for asylum. That's another story for another day. But it is important that the story is told, because decent, good people spent their lives, literally in service. The word is not just a nice word; it's a word that typifies how people see their civic involvement, and ending up being persecuted as a result of it. I don't know what good might come out of this in the long run, but I trust something will. But it's important we don't forget what's happened, because it's an important human story of our time. So thank you.
Thank you.